On one side, gold glittered, where time was measured by zero, and sweetness changed the world's taste. On the other side, an empire was being buried in its own ashes, where poison was a weapon and the emperor a joke of himself. The page of history you've never heard. Welcome to part 2 of the 4th century.
Incident number 26. The Beard Hater, Misopogon, 363 AD. Emperor Julian wrote a strange book titled Misopogon, the Beard Hater. In reality, it was a piece of satire in which he mocked his own long, shaggy beard because people used to laugh at it. He wrote, "My lice run through my beard like wild animals in a forest." An emperor roasting himself is extremely rare in history. Incident number 27. The invention of crystallized sugar. Sugarcane had been in India for centuries, but around the 4th century, Gupta period, Indian chemists discovered the technique of turning sugarcane juice into granulated crystals. This was called khanda, from which the English word candy originated. When Chinese travelers visited India, they were stunned to see this white powder. Before this, the world used only honey for sweetness. India gave sugar to the world. Incident number 28. The Emperor excommunicated. Ambrose versus Theodosius, 390 AD. In a fit of rage, Emperor Theodosius ordered the massacre of 7,000 people in the city of Thessalonica. Following this, Saint Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, barred the emperor from entering the church. For the first time in history, an unarmed priest made the world's most powerful emperor bow down. To seek forgiveness, the emperor had to wear commoners' clothes and perform penance for weeks. This was a clear sign of the church's rising power. Incident number 30. Ujjain, the center of time, prime meridian of Ujjain. In the 4th century and during the Gupta period, the city of Ujjain was the center of the world for Indian astronomers. Just as we measure time from Greenwich, GMT, today, ancient India measured it from Ujjain. It was considered the zero meridian. India's entire calendar and timekeeping were based on this city. Incident number 31. The Tsunami that changed the map. Tsunami of 365 AD. On July 21, 365 AD, a massive earthquake, 8.0 plus, struck the Mediterranean Sea. It triggered a tsunami so large that ships in Alexandria were hurled onto the roofs of buildings. This catastrophe was called the Day of Horror. It lifted the island of Crete 9 meters above sea level. Geologists can still see the marks of that day even now. Incident number 31. The Latin Bible, the Vulgate, 382 AD. The Pope commissioned Saint Jerome to translate the Bible into Latin. He prepared the Vulgate. This translation was so influential that the Catholic Church used this version for the next 1,500 years. According to legend, Jerome kept a lion in his cave that acted as his protector. Incident number 32. Poison damsels, Vishakanyas. In Gupta period literature, such as the plays of Vishakadatta, there is mention of Vishakanya. These were beautiful girls who were given small doses of poison from childhood. Their bodies became so toxic that mere physical contact or a kiss could kill an enemy king. They were the world's early bioweapons. Incident number 33. The Gothic Alphabet. Bishop Ulfilas wanted to convert the Goths, Germanic tribes, to Christianity, but they had no written language. Ulfilas invented a brand new alphabet for them. He translated the Bible, but intentionally left out the Book of Kings. Why? Because it contained too many wars, and the Goths were already very warlike. He didn't want to give them any more ideas. Incident number 35. China's sage of calligraphy. In 4th century China lived Wang Shiji, known as the sage of calligraphy. He wrote the famous Lanting Ji Shu. His handwriting was so beautiful that people would fight over his discarded scraps of paper. Emperor Taizong loved his handwriting so much that he had the original copy buried with him in his tomb. Incident number 36. Great-grandfather of the dollar, the Solidus. Emperor Constantine introduced the Solidus, a coin made of pure gold, to stop inflation. This coin was so pure and stable that its weight and value remained unchanged for the next 700 years until the end of the Byzantine Empire. It is called the dollar of the Middle Ages. The word soldier comes from this, as they were paid in soliduses. Incident number 37. Removal of the Altar of Victory. For centuries, a statue of the Altar of Victory stood in the Roman Senate House. Every senator would burn incense there before entering. In 384 AD, a Christian emperor forcefully removed it. The old pagans, like Symmachus, pleaded, "Let us grow old with our gods," but they were not heard. This marked the official death of Rome's ancient religion. Incident number 37. Whistling arrows. At the end of the 4th century, the Huns arrived in Europe. They possessed a unique technology, whistling arrows. These arrows had holes in their heads. When the arrow flew through the air, it made a terrifying whistling sound. This was psychological warfare. The enemies couldn't tell where the sound was coming from and would panic in fear.
Incident number 38. The 9 gems, Navaratnas. It is said that there were 9 scholars, Navaratnas, in the court of Chandragupta Vikramaditya, including Kalidasa, poet, Varahamihira, astronomer, Dhanvantari, physician, and Amarsimha, lexicographer. This was the world's first recorded think tank. The king did not take any decision without the advice of these 9 experts. Incident number 39. Barbarization of the army. By the end of the 4th century, very few original Roman soldiers were left in the Roman army. The generals' names were now Stilicho or Ricimer, who were of German or barbarian origin. Romans had become lazy in fighting. They had outsourced their security to the very people, barbarians, they hated the most. This mistake led to the downfall of Rome. Incident number 40. Ajanta Caves, early phase. Although most of the Ajanta caves belong to a later period, a new era of painting was beginning there in the 4th century, Vakataka Gupta influence. They used polished metal mirrors to bring light into the dark caves by reflecting sunlight inside, and the blue color, lapis lazuli, they used was imported all the way from Afghanistan. Incident number 41. The emperor who was burned alive. Death of Valens, 378 AD. In the Battle of Adrianople, the Goths surrounded the Roman army. Emperor Valens, being wounded, hid in a cottage. The enemies did not know the emperor was inside. They simply set the cottage on fire. A Roman emperor who was considered a god was burned to ashes in a common hut, and his body was never found. This was Rome's most humiliating defeat. Incident number 42. Temples and fireballs. Julian's temple fire, 363 AD. Emperor Julian, who hated Christians, ordered the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, Third Temple, in Jerusalem to prove Christian prophecies wrong. As soon as the workers started digging the foundation, terrifying balls of fire erupted from underground, burning the workers. This happened repeatedly until the work was stopped. Christians saw it as a miracle. Scientists believe it was the bursting of natural gas pockets. Incident number 43. Tea becomes a drink. Before this, tea was used in China only as a medicine or vegetable. In the 4th century, Jin Dynasty, people started drinking it for taste and pleasure for the first time. It became a fashion among the elite.
If you didn't serve tea to a guest, you were considered rude. The true birth of the world's favorite drink happened right here. Incident number 44, writing of Puranas. In India, the holy Hindu texts Puranas, Vishnu Purana, Vayu Purana, etc. were only heard and recited for centuries, oral tradition. They were formally written down for the first time during the Gupta period, 4th century. The stories of avatars, Rama, Krishna, Varaha that we know in Hinduism today are a gift of the written form from this century. The Gupta period gave Hinduism its modern shape. Incident number 45, the flat heads of the Huns, artificial cranial deformation. At the end of the 4th century, the Huns arrived in Europe. They looked very frightening because their heads were long and flat, alien-like. This wasn't natural. They would tightly band bandages around their children's heads from infancy so that the skull would elongate. They considered it a sign of beauty and status, while the Romans thought they were monsters. Incident number 47, Eutropius the Eunuch. An unusual event occurred in the Eastern Roman Empire in 399 AD. A eunuch named Eutropius, who was once a slave, became so powerful that he was made consul, the highest office in Rome. Traditional Romans considered this a grave insult. He was the first and last eunuch in history to achieve this rank. However, his enemies had him killed that same year. Incident number 48, Ge Hong and the Elixir, Ge Hong's Elixir. The great Chinese alchemist Ge Hong spent his life in the 4th century searching for the medicine of immortality. In his book, he accurately described the symptoms of tuberculosis and smallpox. He didn't find immortality, but he significantly advanced Chinese medicine. Incident number 49, gold coins of the Gupta period, reign of gold. The Gupta Empire is not called the Golden Age for no reason. At that time, even the common public used gold coins, dinara. Fa Hien, wrote that while people used shells, cowries for small transactions, there was so much gold in large trade that India came to be known as the Golden Bird, Sone ki Chiriya. The artistry on these coins was world-class. Incident number 50, ban on Gladiator Games, 399 AD. Christian emperors did not like the bloody fights of gladiators. In 399 AD, Emperor Honorius ordered the closure of gladiator schools. Although these games continued secretly for a few more years, the 4th century marked the end of the sport that had entertained Rome for 500 years. Now people became obsessed with chariot racing. Incident number 50, Saint Ambrose and hymns, invention of hymns. Bishop Ambrose of Milan noticed that people were getting bored in church. He introduced hymns and group singing, antiphonal singing. He created catchy songs that even illiterate people could sing. This was a perfect blend of music therapy and propaganda. The choir seen in churches today had its beginnings in the 4th century.